Hi, I'm Salma Aslam, a social worker, been qualified for nearly a decade. So what is the best thing about being a social worker? One, I think, is about all the different kind of families that you meet. I've always worked with children, and I think what I've learned over the years is it's not about making big, massive differences. It's about implementing small changes and trying to get the children that you work with to thrive and hopefully do the best that they can, and supporting parents in getting them there. So seeing various changes that I've made has been, I'd say, amazing, both personally and professionally. Um, I think it's amazing working in such diverse areas and meeting various professionals that come from different backgrounds. And I guess it's also having such an awareness around society, where we live, and I guess really working in the heart of all of that has been amazing.
The best thing about being a social worker is working with young people. That's the reason why I became a social worker. I think it's so important to help shape their lives so that they can live really successful lives later on, especially if they're young. We know those first 6 years help shape them later on, help shape who they are, help shape what they do, what they become, how they look back at life. And I like the idea of being part of that and trying to make it as best as possible for them. And I go away thinking that maybe I've done something, and later in their lives that things are going better. I really push education as well, because I think education helps take young persons out of what's happening sometimes and give them greater opportunities. And I really push for that because I really want to see them do their best. And that's why I became a social worker, and I love being a social worker for that.
The best thing about being a social worker is seeing a transformation in the families' lives, the families that you touch, seeing the changes from when you first start and by the time you finish, and to actually get people saying, "Thank you, we've done very well. We wouldn't be here if you hadn't been around." That's what I like, making the difference.
I found that the best thing about being a social worker is that I can go out, meet new people, make connections, form relationships, and just to get to know all of the lovely families, young children and young people in Dudley.
So I'd say that my top tip for working with young people, particularly when talking about direct work, is actually with regards to structure. I think sometimes we can over-structure things and over-plan things for children and young people in those sessions, but actually I think it's really important to have an idea of the work that we're completing and what sort of area we're targeting, but also being led by young people. Like, there have been so many occasions where I've gone to a session with one idea in mind and one sort of plan and direction of going, and the direction we've gone has been completely the opposite, but been exactly what was necessary and exactly what was needed, because I'm being led by young people and we're listening to what they have to say.
Hi, I'm Katie. I've recently qualified as a social worker, and throughout my time here, it's just been absolutely incredible working with young people and doing direct work. And I've really noticed the importance of the direct work with the children is making a relationship and actually getting on their level and talking about what they like. Even if you're going with an agenda and it's nothing like what you're going to get out of them, but you have a laugh, you play some games, and then it's about building that relationship to get those meaningful discussions in later.
So I've been working in Dudley Children's Services since November 21. It's a really great place to work. The colleagues are great. I think more than anything, it's about building those relationships with the families and the vulnerable children. In terms of coming to Dudley, we're given a direct toolkit which we use when we go out to speak to children. I think my favourite part of doing the direct work is using the worry bear. When you give a child the worry bear and they're able to express what worries them, what makes them happy. I think in terms of direct work, I learn a lot about myself as a practitioner, and I feel like there's so much to learn and so much to offer in social work. I'm still on my journey developing and learning, and I hope to continue to work at Dudley.
So straight away, when you ask what my three top tips for building relationships with children and young people, I think that the first one is actually being led by them, being ready to accept what the young person has and wanting to know them as an individual rather than a case or as what's been handed to you to work with. I want to get to know that young person, what they are interested in, what they like, the things that wind them up, the things that they really enjoy doing. It's about getting to know them as an individual, who they are, not necessarily the surrounding circumstances. That's important, but in the middle of that, we've got a young person that we want to focus on. Another point that I think is really important is just actually listening to and valuing what young people have to say. For example, there are some young people that won't want to meet you in certain areas because of some of the problems that they might have in those areas. So I would be foolish to push a session at that youth centre or to push a session here, but rather to adapt it so that they're in a position where they're comfortable and ready to actually do some of the work that we're planning to do, rather than be in a position where actually they're feeling starting off on the back foot and they're feeling a bit of pressure, they're feeling uncomfortable. I want to make the young person feel comfortable as a primary focus. I'm not jumping straight into the work. How can we get you to feel comfortable so that we can start to look at some of these issues and start to help you with whatever it might be? When you're working with young people, building trust is really important. There's always this expectation that young people should trust the adults around them, whether that's correct or incorrect. There's always this expectation young people should trust their teachers, they should trust their support workers, but actually, isn't it equally as important that we allow young people to trust us so that we can trust them as well? We need to give young people responsibilities and the opportunities to practice what we're supporting them to do. Actually give them the opportunity to put that into practice. I would also say, it's important that young people can see us as humans as well when it comes to building trust. If we're going in with a notebook and big heavy bag and we're visibly stressed, we're visibly in a rush, young people pick up on that. There's no pretending that young people don't see that. So actually we need to be aware of how we're looking to young people. We want them to be able to feel like we are inviting and we're people that can be trusted, rather than just somebody that's cracking on with a job, because young people do pick up on that and they do see that.
So building relationships with children and young people, what do I recommend? You finding a mutual interest. So for example, I had a child before in one of my schools who was a mute, wouldn't talk to nobody. I noticed her bag was Stranger Things. I'd never watched Stranger Things in my life. On my break, I watched a 15-minute recap on Netflix of Stranger Things. Next time I went into the classroom or when I met that young person, I just mentioned something totally wrong about Stranger Things, which got a reaction, got that conversation. Sometimes it can just be a small start. You start knocking the barriers and you get those conversations engaging. Small steps and just being consistent every day.